Hello everyone, welcome. I've not had coffee yet this morning, so I will definitely be sipping on that as we do our interview. So we'll wait here for a few minutes just to let Esmeralda jump on, as well as to let Instagram let everybody know that we are starting. Oh, hi, my mom just joined. Hi, Mom. They never catch these things. Oh, I think she might have jumped off. That's funny. That happened last time with my dad. He jumped on. He thought he was interrupting something because, you know, they're a little older. They don't do lives. And so he thought he was having some sort of private discussion and like immediately jumped off. So it's kind of funny. But hopefully everybody's doing well and having a good Monday so far. Oh, she's here. Hi, Esmeralda. Hold on one second. I was just telling everybody I need to get caffeinated. There you are. Send request. Awesome. So she'll be up here on here in a moment. Hi.
Hey.
How you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
Good. Oh man, you're like seeing half my head. Hold on one second. Like have this on my old tripod, so like hopefully it sticks and stays. Okay.
Awesome.
How's it going? How's your weekend?
Good. It was good. The rain always gives me, well, my allergies get a little bit, unsteady there, but I'm good. Ready to start this week.
Yeah, I mean, the rain, I'm ready for it to be done. I know Texas, so we need it, but I'm like, I literally just had my lawn mowed. Like, it's like super long.
I know. Yes.
The mosquitoes are killing me. Anyway.
Right.
Well, thank you so much for joining me. I'm really glad I got to talk to you, especially this month because it's Mental Health Awareness Month. So
yes.
I wanted to do something, within that theme. So I really appreciate you taking the time. So let's just jump into it. So could you tell us a little bit about yourself, about your business?
Yeah. So a little bit about myself. I am a licensed professional counselor. I am a mom of 2 boys, and I will be celebrating my 12th anniversary this month. And aside from that, a business owner. So that's a big one too. And I'm also originally from Mexico, actually. So I am bilingual.
I knew you're bilingual. I didn't know you're from Mexico. That's awesome.
Yes.
Well, very, very cool. Well, can you tell us a little bit about how you became a mental health counselor, your background behind that, how you found your passion of working with pregnant and postpartum women?
Yeah, definitely. So, I was thinking about this, and there's always the cliche, I guess, with therapists where we say, oh, well, I wanted to help people, and even though it sounds a bit cliche, like, I think that that's just the truth. And, I decided to go into mental health counseling just because at that time, I was really discovering that my childhood and my background and a lot of things in my life really played a significant role in how I managed myself in life and who I was as a person. And some of these things were things that just needed to be processed and like healed through. So that really led me to wanting to help people do the same thing for themselves. And through my work, I actually, when I was going to graduate school, I was like, I'm not going to work with kids. That was like not my thing. And then I ended up working with kids for many, many years. And eventually I was like, oh, well, I won't work with adults then. I'll just work with kids. And then I worked for the early childhood intervention program for 3 years and younger as a mental health, kind of like infant mental health. And it was just amazing. I loved that work. But I found that in that work, I really, I always knew that parent-child dynamic was very important. But it was during that time that I really saw the immense value in being able to work with parents more directly. I was able to kind of witness how postpartum depression, or even during the pregnancy stages, how that would ultimately affect the way that we would parent into those early like childhood years of our for our children. And so through that, it also made me realize and accept as a therapist that I myself had really gone through a lot with postpartum depression and anxiety with my children. And so I started to work on myself and eventually decided, you know what, this is what I want to do. This is what I really want to focus on. And that's what basically launched Pillars of Life Counseling, where I focus primarily on perinatal mental health.
That's beautiful. And I like that you said that, because I think, I don't know, I can see parallels with some things that I do and some things that you do. Like, so let me back. I'm sorry. I'm not like articulating this very well.
No, you're good.
But you mentioned that, you know, later in life, you're able to reflect on what you're going through. And I think that's wonderful because it's kind of like, it's not too late. Like you might have different feelings, but it's still important to process that.
Absolutely.
And I think sometimes people will bury that kind of stuff down and you don't really see how that might affect you, you know, later on down the line.
Yes. I mean, I love that you say that you bring, or you point that out, because, you know, I think that counseling entails a lot of the times doing a lot of that reflection, right? And understanding a lot of that. And it's hard for people sometimes to go back to childhood things or the past, because our society teaches us that we're not to live in the past, or we're not to be dwelling on the past. But it's not about dwelling or anything. It's reflecting, it's processing through it so that we really understand why we are where we are right now.
Yeah, I love that. I think that's so beautiful. So you mentioned that you work mostly with the perinatal community.
Yes.
But do you ever, are those the only types of people that you see, or do you ever see any other demographic of folks, or is that just kind of your niche, your specialty?
Yeah, so I am primarily focused on perinatal mental health. When I started opening my practice, I had clients that were not perinatal background. That wasn't their concern. So I still have some of those clients that I work with. But right now, when I get new phone calls and stuff like that, I do focus on perinatal mental health. And so that really can mean that, you know, someone is attempting to conceive, someone is already pregnant, or is postpartum, or in that early parenthood season. So those toddler years that can be so challenging.
Give me the strength.
Yes. So, you know, I work in, so even though I say perinatal, it sounds very like small, but it really isn't. I mean, because it's a spectrum of so many different things that can happen in all of those seasons, right? In those stages. So that's kind of what my focus is right now. And I also have been working a lot with Christian individuals that are really struggling with their faith in terms of also experiencing like hardships in their faith and how that affects their mental health ultimately. But I honestly have found that has bridged together with perinatal mental health, because I primarily serve the perinatal community. So it's been a good relationship, not a good relationship, but a good way to bridge both of those things together.
And the reason I asked that question too is because, like, for example, me, I have a specialty with pregnant and postpartum women.
Yes.
But also my clients kind of run the gamut. So I want to let people know that if you do service other types of people, that you might be a good fit for them potentially. I also think it's important that you mention the spectrum, because sometimes when people think, oh, pregnancy and postpartum, I have to have a kid or I have to be pregnant. But like I said, you know, wanting to conceive, because there's all kinds of different emotions going.
Right. Oh, absolutely.
So that's beautiful. Thank you.
Yeah.
So what exactly is counseling?
Oh, you know,
I feel like that's a big question.
It is a big question. And counseling is definitely, I was thinking about that. And I think the way that I was able to maybe conceptualize that is that I think counseling is just, it's a safe space, you know, it's a safe space where you can come and work with someone that is unbiased, that is able to look at your situation from a different perspective, from an outer perspective. You know, when when we talk to a friend, like I have a friend that I can talk to about something that's upsetting me, and she gets all fired up with me, right? Like she's like, oh, well, you know, this and this and that. And
Yeah,
so,
girl. Yeah.
no, don't, you know, you tell them that and all of these things. And although those types of relationships can be, I love my friend and I know that she just cares about me and she's really like basically defending me and protecting me. Sometimes we need someone that will be able to look at the situation from a different perspective and not have any emotions attached to the situation at hand, right? I think counseling also involves like an individual, a therapist or counselor that really cares about people, right? Cares about you as an individual. Even if I don't know you, like I care about your well-being, that I'm going to be here to serve you, to be able to help you process, to be able to provide you a space where you can talk about the things that are really affecting you in the moment, and really work with you as a team to come up with, okay, then how do we cope through that? How do we find some strategies? How do we understand where that's coming from? So all sorts of different things. So when I think of just what is counseling, I would definitely say that I always say to my clients, this is a safe space where you can come and be your authentic self and be supported authentically, you know, without the judgment, or even the pressure to make any decisions in the moment or anything like that. It's just, I really do consider it a sacred space, yeah, for individuals.
And I think that's important for people to know too, because, you know, especially the no judgment thing, like,
yeah,
I've never done counseling, I'll admit. I haven't done therapy or anything like that, but I imagine it's very difficult to be vulnerable with somebody that you don't know. And then maybe for others it's easier.
Right.
So I think it's important that people understand, like, this is a place where, like you said, you can be your authentic self and, you know, say the things you say and not be judged. And I'm not going to be the person judging you or whatever that is. But that's awesome.
Right.
And then I had a question too. So, like, is a counselor different than a therapist, or is there a difference, or what? Can you dive a little bit into that?
Yeah. So it's not different. I think we use them interchangeably. A counselor, like for example, I'm a licensed professional counselor, so the word counselor is in my licensure. But for example, a licensed clinical social worker, a licensed family and marriage therapist would also be considered counselors. Mm-hmm. And so counselor and therapist, they're just used interchangeably to say the same thing. It just sometimes depends what people are most comfortable using. So some people might say, you know, you might hear the terms like psychotherapist, which is the same thing, mental health therapist. So the only challenge with using the word therapist is that, for example, there's many fields where people use the word therapist, right? Like you're a massage therapist, a physical therapist, an occupational therapist. So in those situations, it's just describing like the service we provide and that we basically have a licensure under it. But there's also, for us, it's, you know, we're mental health therapists. And it's basically the same thing. We just use them kind of interchangeably.
Okay.
In that way.
Awesome. Okay, so I have another kind of big question.
Yeah.
So what do you think is the importance that counseling or mental health help can play in a person's life?
Yeah, so kind of going back to a little bit of what counseling in itself was, I think that the importance of counseling is that, you know, a lot of the times, like, people tend to feel either overwhelmed or alone in a particular situation that they may be going through. And that is, in a sense, the importance of counseling, that you have somebody to support you, to walk with you in any given situation that you're going through. And that there really isn't anything wrong with having someone, you know, walking alongside you through any struggle that you're facing. And so the importance of it is that when we have somebody that can support us that way, then we decrease like the stress levels that we experience in our lives, right? We can't get rid of the problems at hand that we are faced with, but we can decrease the way that, you know, the stress affects us. We can decrease sometimes just how intense that stress can be, how frequent, and we can increase our ability to just cope better with situations. We can increase the ability to understand ourselves more and understand like our needs and how to implement those needs. And so the importance of counseling and mental health support is really more for the benefit of making sure that we can find some sort of balance in our life. And I know that the word balance is like difficult out here, but the way that I view balance is that like we individually get to set what that looks like, right? So balance could just mean that I'm taking care of my mental health by sleeping better, right? And so that gives my life a little bit more of regulation, right? And so it's really about figuring out who you as the individual, how do you benefit from this support, and having someone that you can talk to, having someone that has your back, right? Like someone that is really there to say, I care about your well-being and I want you to care about it like even more, right? So that's ultimately, I hope that can kind of express it a little bit, because it is a big one to say, oh, how do I?
Everybody's going to have different reasons that I like that it's just extra support that some people may feel like they have, but they might be missing a piece of it, and you can that other piece, or maybe it's support that somebody doesn't have.
Absolutely right. Yeah.
So I think that's awesome. So can you give me some reasons, which you kind of touched on this, so this might be a little redundant, but what are some reasons that people receive counseling? So like, are there any certain conditions, or someone said extremely well said.
Oh, thanks.
Are there certain emotions or feelings that people might be having that can alert them that maybe they should seek some mental health help or anything like that?
Yeah. So, you know, there just isn't anything too little or too small. You know, there's just so many different reasons why somebody would seek support. I've had clients that came to me like for one session, and because all they really needed was, and they didn't know it was just for one session, right? They came in because they wanted to process something. And then after they processed it with someone that was just there to hear them out and maybe validate where they were coming from, and maybe talking about some strategies to decrease some of the stress or to address some of the relational issues that they were having, like didn't come back again because they felt that was enough for them, right? And then there's other situations where like, let's say sleep can be a really difficult one to regulate. You know, it's depending on what factors and symptoms are like affecting our sleep, right? So it can be anything from the way we're eating, to if we're not moving, to the amounts of stress, to relational stress. Like there could be so many different factors that contribute to our inability to get good, adequate sleep. And so regulating sleep might actually take longer to get to that goal, right? But it can really be so many different things, from I'm not getting along with my in-laws, to I don't know how to handle my toddler, to I'm getting angry and irritable all the time, or I'm crying a lot, to, I mean, there could just be so many things. And none of them are on a scale of like least worst to worst.
Yeah.
Right. Or like severe. Everything I think is just, everyone is affected by things differently. And there's just, I believe that there shouldn't be any shame about how we handle the challenges in our lives. The truth is just, we're different we process everything different. And if I'm having stress about work, then that can be enough for me to talk to someone and process with someone. And just sometimes unloading all of that is so beneficial to someone's mental health.
I really like that you said, no problem, or, not problem, but no issue is like too small or too big. Because I think sometimes people might be like, there's other people dealing with so much stuff, and I just yell a lot. Well,
yes,
that's still something that is causing, like you said, causing stress, causing
yes,
pain.
it's very common. It's very common to hear that. And that's what we call like minimizing your own experience, right? We tend to think, well, I'm not doing that bad, or my situation's not that bad, so I'm not going to go and bother someone. But those messages come from somewhere, right? Like we learned that message somewhere in our life. And so sometimes it's just really important to understand, well, where did it come from? And do I really believe that?
Yeah.
Right? Or do I need to shift that thought in order for me to get the help that I need?
Yeah, I love that. I think that's so beautiful and so true. I'm like thinking of all the things where I've been like, it's been big issues, but I'm like, I'm fine. I've had worse. It's cool.
Yeah.
You girl, I need to come see you.
Yeah.
Awesome. So do you feel like there is still a stigma associated with counseling or mental health issues, or seeking the help of a mental health professional?
Yeah, definitely. I definitely think that there is still a stigma associated. I'm happy to see that there's definitely there's more people right now, there's a lot of people talking about it. We've had Mental Health Awareness Month for many, many years. And I feel like this year, it's like everywhere I look, it's being talked about. And I think that is such an amazing thing, because it really does bring it more to people's awareness. But the stigma is definitely, I think it's still there. Like I mentioned, I work with a lot of faith-based individuals, and stigma in the faith community for mental health is definitely like still high. But I think that what we're doing as a community collectively in just talking about it more, and some people even sharing their personal experiences and going to therapy, like that stuff is so powerful. And I'm just forever grateful to everyone doing that.
That's awesome. And so is there anything specific that we can do to stop that stigma, or any steps to help eliminate that?
Yeah. Yeah, I think that a lot of what's happening now with people talking about it more, it's incredibly helpful to the mental health, providers. It helps providers to not be the only ones like talking about it, right? Yeah. So when the community at large is talking about it, like I think that really makes people listen. And aside from that, I think that another way to do that is if you know someone that is maybe going to therapy or that is struggling with something emotionally, in the mental health perspective, then I think that you as a friend, like even letting that person know, hey, I'm so proud of you for doing that. I'm so proud of you for going, because I can only imagine that was a hard decision. Or maybe it was easy for you, but I admire the fact that you did that, because maybe I still struggle with it, or whatever it may be. But sometimes letting somebody else know that you see them, that you see the bold step that they're taking and getting help, and the courageous step that they're taking and getting help, like that can be so beneficial to any potential stigma that person may still be experiencing from going to therapy, right? And I think that making those changes in one individual at a time is just so powerful. And I would say that that's potentially one of the biggest ways. And I don't think I could ever tell someone, oh, speak up and share your experience, because that's a very like personal, private matter. But I think that when somebody does feel comfortable sharing that they're going to therapy or that they have sought help before, I think it's so important to let them know that we see them and that we're so proud of them for doing that, because the stigma is definitely still exists in our society.
Yeah, and I love that because, I mean, you're right. People talking about it and, you know, sharing their story or bringing awareness, like doing interviews like this or what have you. I mean, that's all great and fine, but I think you're absolutely right when you said that talking to the individual is powerful, because you may have changed their perspective and they talk to other people about that, or, you know, pass that along in their children and start to change that stigma more internally. I think that's great. And I would never have thought to have done that. So awesome.
Yeah, it's hard. I mean, because sometimes like, well, how do I even go up to someone and say that, right? But in conversation, sometimes if someone feels comfortable enough with you to tell you, yeah, you know, I've been going to therapy and doing all of that, I think sometimes it's okay to say, you know what, I want to stop you and say, like, that's amazing that you did that, you know, because I think people, even as a therapist, I've been open about the fact that I've struggled with, you know, postpartum depression and anxiety, and I've gone to therapy myself. And initially that was very uncomfortable as a therapist to say that, but eventually I was like, no, like it's okay to be able to verbalize that, because somebody else could be listening, and the fact that maybe they just know that, hey, it's okay for even therapists to go, then maybe I can go too, right?
Yeah, I think that's awesome. You're so right. Okay, so kind of gearing back or shifting back towards you and your business. So what does a counseling session with you look like?
Yeah, so the counseling session with me looks like, it can look different depending on what your needs are. But for the most part, I can speak to what my approach is for the most part. So that first appointment, I really try to make it a point that whenever you contact me to schedule something, I, you know, communicate with you. I let you know what paperwork you're going to be needing. Everything that you do is electronic. So the reason why I love that is because it really takes away from the session being too much about paperwork. That first appointment, I find that I spend around 10 to 15 minutes of that first appointment addressing all of the paperwork that the client has filled out. And then I really like to make sure that the remainder, like 45 minutes of that first appointment, is really focused on that client telling me everything that they want to say. And I just have my assessment hat on, per se, you know, where I already know what they have filled out. I try sometimes not to get too caught up in reading what a paper says, because I feel like a document doesn't give you the full picture of someone. But I do love, you know, allowing my client to have that initial session where they can just speak what is on their mind and on their heart. And the reason why I do that is because, you know, personally, I've gone to therapy before, and I've really needed that time to be able to go into that first appointment, because it can be so nerve-wracking to go to that first appointment, that I want to be able to just speak everything that I'm thinking about and I'm worried about. And, you know, sometimes we might feel like, whoa, I just unloaded a lot. But, you know, I find that most people just feel slightly better just being able to have said everything they needed to say. And part of that is also me understanding patterns of where things have come from. And so that first session is a lot of me understanding you as an individual, and we eventually get to talking about what your goals are, where you want to go from here, how you want to. I sometimes ask people, do you like books? Do you like podcasts? How do you like to process, so that I can also think about ways to help you process in ways that are already your strengths. And then sessions thereafter, are us really focusing on, okay, then how do we tackle these different things that you've reported to me, and what is at the top of the priority, right? Like what is at the top of that pyramid? And I incorporate things like worksheets, like writing. I'm a huge narrative person, so I encourage my clients to get a notebook for therapy itself. Because like we talked about earlier, going back to reflect on everything, I think can be just incredibly powerful. Because we're very critical with ourselves and we're very hard on ourselves. So we could be making a slight progress or progress in our processing, and still don't give ourselves credit because we don't see ourselves as like 180 change, right? And so the journal, I think, sometimes can be helpful in helping people see that, wow, I really have processed a lot and like worked through a lot. So that's usually what I do. I participate a lot in my sessions, so it's very like conversation, and I don't like to just like sit there and like not do anything unless that someone is just processing. Like there's individuals that just come in, they process, I am present for them, and that was good, right? Yeah. And there's others that we sit down and go through worksheets and process information and do writing and do all of these things. So I think it's just more of adjusting to each of my clients, definitely, and their needs.
And I love that you brought, excuse me, I love that you brought that up, because I'm like, what if somebody can't just unload, and like, what if they have trouble starting that conversation? So
right.
Knowing that you have other tools to help them, I think is important, because I feel like I would be one of those people like, okay, I'm here, but I don't know what to say.
Yeah. And I think that, you know, I know that it can feel maybe awkward for the client when they're coming in, you know, and they don't know where to start or what to say. But I do find that for myself, at least as a therapist, I find that I'm okay saying, you know, even saying like, why do you think it's hard for you to verbalize something or to verbalize what's going on? And that in itself can really start a thread of understanding patterns in your life. So, you know, I think your therapist would definitely know where to kind of support you and kind of get started from there.
Yeah, and I think it's important for people to know that there are different approaches out there that could work.
Absolutely.
It's just making the first step of making the appointment.
Yes. Yes.
For sure. Awesome. Well, how frequently do you recommend, and I know this will probably be different, but how frequently do you recommend people come in for a counseling service or session?
Yeah, I definitely think it depends on the like severity and the frequency of the symptoms that my clients are experiencing. I also like to give people the autonomy to decide what that would look like for them. There are some occasions where I will say, you know, I do recommend like a weekly appointment, depending, again, like on the severity and the frequency. And then ultimately get to a point where the client can, you know, if a client tells me, okay, I think I'm ready for bi-weekly appointments, then, you know, it's never anything set in stone. I think it's just more about checking in and making sure that the frequency we're doing right now is still enough for them. Mm-hmm. Or if they need more, then we can also, you could even be at a monthly check-in basis and have something drastic happen in your life. And it's okay for us to go back to weekly appointments. You know, it just really depends on the needs that you have in the particular season that you're in. Mm-hmm. I'm definitely more about talking to my clients individually to figure out what that's going to look like for them.
Yeah. And I think that's important for people to know too, because sometimes they may be like, I don't know how much I need. And for it to be a flexible thing is beneficial for someone, for sure.
Yeah.
Okay, so I always ask this question to everyone I interview. But how do you feel, because I'm a massage therapist, as many of you know, how do you feel like counseling and services like massage therapy can benefit someone? Or can it? Or can it be something that is just on its own? What are your thoughts and feelings on that?
Oh my goodness. Do you know that I dream of like having a massage therapist like available to do a massage on my clients right after they finish therapy, you know?
Hey, that might be something you can offer in the future.
That is, I think that is honestly something that, because so, you know, emotional health, our mental health is so intertwined with our physical health, you know, and um part of my job from listening to a client is also paying attention to their nonverbals, right? And am I saying that right? Yeah. And you know, paying attention to how much they're holding their breath when they're feeling emotions, how much are their shoulders like tense, and how much are their, you know, how much they're maybe even reporting complaints about their physical pain in their body. And so mental health and the body are so, you know, our brain is what runs the show, right? And it really controls a lot of our movement. It has everything to do with our physical body. And so if I just dream of the day where my client can have a counseling session and right after say, okay, now you have your massage, you know, and how great would that be to someone? Because all of those emotions are housed in the body, and our body then tenses up, right? And so I think it's absolutely vital. It's so important to be able to incorporate massage into our life. And I will tell you, as an individual, it's hard to do that, which is why I appreciate your mobile services.
Thank you.
Yes, because it makes it so much easier, even for someone like me, like getting out to an appointment. It can be really hard, you know, so definitely highly recommend.
Well, I love that your response, because it's so funny. A few months ago, I think I did a 2-part post about the mind body connection, and
yes,
I see it. And I know me and Dr. Erica of Empowered Chiropractic, she's right next to me. Babe Support Babe just said, I'm adding a therapy session before my massage session with you in July. Well,
yay!
Thank you. But yeah, we both talked about this before, me and Dr. Erica, about like, people hold their emotions in their body, and they may be like, oh, I'm coming in for back pain. And yes, we can work on the physical, but if there's something going on internally that you have yet to process or, you know, to work on, that pain may not go away. It might feel better because, you know, we worked on you manually, but it's still there. And so I don't think that everybody has that clear understanding of how the mind and the body work together and how they affect and influence one another.
Yes.
I'm like so passionate about that.
Yes. It is so important. So definitely both are phenomenal together. Yeah.
So if you were able to do that, and it doesn't even necessarily need to be massage therapy. Maybe you like acupuncture better, or maybe just the simple act of moving your body and doing a yoga or stretching or exercise. Just something that can help you to release those emotions, both in the physical sense, and then, you know, maybe talking to somebody.
Yeah, so definitely.
Great. So you have quite a few credentials.
Yes.
So could you talk to us a little bit about what that means? Because I know sometimes people will be like, oh, they have many, many letters after their name. Maybe I need to go to that person. So can you talk to us about what that is?
Yeah. So usually my credentials are the MA is just a master's. So in order to become a counselor, you have to have a master's degree. So the MA is just a master's degree, which all therapists have to have. LPC is the licensed professional counselor, which just means that I have a license to practice counseling in the state of Texas. And the perinatal mental health certification means that I have gone through training specifically for perinatal mental health, and that I completed 2 years minimum of experience with working in that field. And then I took an exam to become certified. So you'll find that there's people that have taken the training for perinatal mental health. And what I would honestly say is that if you find someone that has the training in perinatal mental health, then that is honestly equivalent to what the letters under my name are. I just took the exam, right? So give myself the letters.
Sorry.
Oh, wait, are we good?
Gotcha.
Okay. Yeah. So
yeah, we're a
then
little
what?
delayed. I got a phone call. I'm trying to decline it. Sorry. Are you? It was
Okay.
delayed.
Okay. There we go.
Sorry.
I can hear
Anyway,
you.
okay,
No,
gotcha.
you're good.
I was able to hear that. Hopefully everybody did too.
Yeah. So just with the perinatal mental health certification, it just means I've had minimum 2 years experience, and I took the exam to become certified. And why that's important, not necessarily just for someone that has the certification, but someone that is trained in perinatal mental health. I do really think that that is important because too often I have clients in my office that have seen people that have not had that training and have sometimes caused a little bit more damage than good, right? And so one common thing that we see, unfortunately, is, for example, intrusive thoughts in perinatal mental health can be very common for moms. And so intrusive thoughts are very scary, right? They can be very uncomfortable thoughts. They can be thoughts in regards to our children's safety, thoughts of even hurting our children or hurting ourselves even, or thoughts of us getting hurt or our children getting hurt. So what can happen is if somebody is not trained to understand that that actually is common, of course we have to assess for like suicidal ideation, right? But more often than not, it is very much just a natural thing that happens when we're struggling with things like postpartum anxiety, or OCD postpartum, or it could be patterns that fall into those categories, right? And so when you go to someone that maybe doesn't understand that, then a mom could easily be told, like, the mom could easily be afraid that they're going to get reported to CPS, or, you know, that their child may be taken away if they say they're having those thoughts. And unfortunately, this has happened. And so when you have a training in this field, you really understand that postpartum depression and anxiety don't present themselves commonly the same way that they do if you're not postpartum. So this is why it's really important to, you know, work with somebody that has at least that training, because then you know that they really understand what you're presenting with, and that they're really there to help you. And postpartum depression and anxiety is, it's completely treatable, right? So if you work with the right person that understands that, then there's a greater, more positive outcome, you know, for you.
And I was really hoping you would bring that up, because I remember a story that you had told. I've taken a perinatal mental health class with her. So yeah, it's important for one, the moms not to be afraid to say something without fear of repercussion.
Right.
Especially if it is something that is treatable.
Absolutely.
And then, because then you put the whole family in turmoil, potentially.
Yes. Yes.
Especially the little ones, and we don't want to do that. So I love that you brought that up, for sure. Okay, so the next question I have is actually questions from the audience. So if you are on and you have a question for Esmeralda, feel free to type it in. We did get a couple questions beforehand. I know they were big ones. I'm going to start off with the easy one first. So, should everyone go to therapy?
Oh, I'm always going to say absolutely.
We already talked. There's no problem too big or too small.
Right, right. I mean, honestly, I think the biggest thing from that is that going to therapy doesn't mean that you are crazy. It doesn't mean that you have an illness. And it may also mean that we may be struggling with an illness like postpartum depression, anxiety, but still there is no hierarchy in, you know, you're better or less than. You know, this is more about how can you do something to help yourself become the person that you want to become, right? To live the life that you want to live. And so if that means you're going to therapy for 3 years, then so be it. If that means that you're going to therapy for 1 day because that's all you needed, then so be it. Like, it has to be more about what your individual need is.
Yeah, I love that. Okay, so the big one. How can we support you and other therapists and mental health professionals?
Oh yeah, that one was a hard one. I was like, oh gosh,
you can blame Christine from Big Support Base.
Oh, well, that makes sense, you know, because she's all about supporting. So I definitely think, like, if you have a therapist friend, like, check in on them, you know, just let them know you're thinking about them. And I think it's hard, you know, just like people in the medical field, like a nurse, or it's hard to talk about the things that are challenging in our field. We can't just talk about things, right? And so sometimes, though, it's beneficial to know that we have a community of support where somebody could just, like, check up on you and say, hey, I hope you're having a good week, or hey, let's meet up for coffee. And I think sometimes most therapists just want to sometimes feel like we're just human too, you know. Like, I think that I tend to have more of a role, even in my friendships, of, because people know I'm a therapist, more of a continued listening ear. And so sometimes, like, I have a friend that will sometimes get together with me, and I just, like, feel like I word vomit because I'm so desperate to, like, speak sometimes, you know. And so sometimes if you have a friend, like, just let them word vomit, or let them, you know, listen to them or check in on them. And I think that's really the best thing, because I know that also burnout right now for therapists is really high.
I can imagine, with all of the crap we've all gone
Yes. So I think little things like that can be significant to someone in their life. And as a therapist, right, like, as it is probably for also, like, a nurse or anyone in the medical field, where just knowing that we have someone that kind of remembers you, and it's just like, hey, I'm thinking of you. I think those things can really go, like, a long way. You know, and I would say that that's the biggest thing, because I couldn't think about anything else at the moment.
Let me talk to you. No, I think that's fair. Absolutely. We did get another question. So he says, you mentioned religion as a barrier to help seeking. Do you find that culture also factors into this as well? I think that's a really interesting question.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's a huge factor. And depending on our cultural expectations, you know, our cultural, even traditions and practices, all of that can really set a barrier to how often people are comfortable or even okay with seeking the help. So it's it's definitely something that I see. And being from a Hispanic background, I mean, I know that it's a very difficult thing to do. Yeah.
That's awesome. Is there, like, this might be a loaded question too, but, like, is there any way around that, or, like, or what are there steps that people can take to avoid maybe conflict in their culture or family? I don't know what I'm exactly saying.
No,
Do you know what I'm trying to say?
Yeah, I think I understand what you're saying. I mean, I think that it's definitely
that's a hard thing.
It's a hard thing, and I think it's definitely more about, like, are you, in a sense, willing to prioritize your own mental health for maybe the repercussions of the pressure or what people might say to you. And I think that that's just something that can also be addressed in therapy, right? When somebody seeks the help, it's really coming up with learning how to set like healthy boundaries while still respecting your culture as much as possible. I think sometimes it's just a matter of, you know, the way we break cycles in our some unhealthy cycles in our cultures are we have to be the first ones to step up and do something different. And that can be a lot for the person doing that. But if you have someone like a therapist to support you, then it can be make the weight slightly heavy. I mean, slightly
less
lighter. Yes.
Awesome.
Yes.
I think that's right. It is a scary thing, but you know, again, you've got that support of that person who you're talking to. So I think that's great. All right. So that was all the questions I had from the audience. If anybody has anything else, feel free to type it in. So the next question, again, this is something I always ask people I interview, but is there any tips or words of wisdom or any sort of mental health practice that you can give the audience watching that maybe they can do on their own, or anything that you just want to say about mental health?
Yeah, I was thinking about this because there could be so many things I could maybe say in that, but I think I'm going to say this, and that is that at least for many of us, being critical of ourselves is such a huge thing. We sometimes tend to be a lot more kind and compassionate toward other people. And, you know, especially for those of us that are in those perinatal stages and parenthood and really dealing with the changes and the transitions through all of that, we can be really extremely difficult with ourselves, right? Like critical. And so rather than sometimes, for example, finding yourself asking yourself, like, why did you do this? Or why are you why did you react that way? Or kind of asking yourself those why questions, like the why question can be coming from a critical perspective, right? So rather than saying that, it's shifting over to, okay, what is going on with me that maybe led me to reacting that way? Or what is going on that leads me to feeling this certain way? So that allows for you to be in a more of an exploration mindset of, let me understand myself more, rather than shame myself or be critical of myself or be stuck in guilt because of a way that I'm feeling or doing, right? Yeah. And so if we start to maybe just shift from, why are you doing this, or just being critical of ourselves when we feel we did something wrong, if we shift it over to, okay, what do I feel? What's going on internally right now? I think that what I love about that is that it allows for you to explore more understanding about yourself. And if you ever feel stuck in understanding more, then that is a good sign that maybe you need that support to be able to talk to someone.
Yeah. I think that's really, really wonderful. And actually somebody mentioned here, I have that problem. I put way too much pressure on myself. And she also said, so true. I try to remember to celebrate the small things.
Yes.
And you're right. Yes. It's just, again, shifting that perspective. And and that's why I like asking these questions, like, what is something somebody can do now? Because you might need that support. And that's where someone like what you do can come into play to help, because a lot of people are very, very critical about themselves and hard on themselves. And so I love the shifting of the mindset and asking those questions, which someone may not have thought of.
Yeah, I mean, we might just be in that automatic response, right? And it might just be something we've learned since we were kids. Depending on our experiences in our environment, I always like to think of, like, we are biopsychosocial spiritual beings. And so not one thing stands alone. Like, they all kind of combine to make up who we are, right? So if we understand how each of these factors contribute to our lives, then I honestly do think that it bridges more of that compassion for ourselves, more of that understanding. And it allows us to be able to seek the help when we need it, because we do come to understand more of, okay, I struggled with this, and that's okay. Like, that's the way that I've been wired, and those have been my experiences and the factors that have contributed to it. So rather than being hard on ourselves and in a sense fostering these negative emotions toward ourselves, then it's bridging more of, you know what, let me take care of myself, let me be compassionate, let me show myself some kindness, and let me allow myself to grow in a different direction.
Yeah, I love that. That's so beautiful. Okay, awesome. Is there anything about your business or the mental health field that you want our audience to know?
Yeah, so my practice is just me and another provider. Her name is Linda Strano Burton, and she is an LPC associate. So she's working on earning her hours to become fully licensed. But she does have her license now, just working on the hours that we all have to work on.
And
stuff, yeah. Yes. And so she specializes in infertility support or challenges trying to conceive and loss. And she also does work with postpartum struggles that may come there too. So, you know, if you are looking for support in any of those areas, my practice is primarily focused on perinatal mental health with the both of us, but just from different angles slightly. And so any needs that you may have pertaining to that, you know, just let us know and we'll be happy to. I'm all about connecting people to the right person. So if I'm not the right fit, we will find someone that you can work with.
Yeah, I love that. Same way. We're both in the birth network, and so
yes.
We're always referring out because there's different fits of people
yes.
for different modality or technique or you know, specialty. So I think that's great. So what are the best ways to connect with you? So like website, social media stuff. How do you prefer people contact you?
Yeah, so definitely connect with me. You can call. My website is pillarsoflifecounseling.com, which is linked on the link tree in my bio on my Instagram, which is POL Counseling. And the link tree there, the website is there. You can call. I would just say also, therapists, we're really bad about answering our phone, not because we don't want to, but because we're usually in session and we don't have the accessibility sometimes of having someone answer our phones. And so please just leave a message and we will call you back. Or email. My email is Esmeralda at pillarsoflifecounseling.com, which is also on my Instagram and my website. Linda's information is there as well. Social media, I would say, you know, don't send me personal information because it's not a secure platform. So if you do want to just get information about my services, it's okay if you want to send me like, you know, what's your number? I want to talk to you or something, then that's okay. I can send that over, but my number will be on that account as well. So that's usually the best way. Email is a really good way to get a hold of me because sometimes I have more time in between sessions to reply to that.
Beautiful. And then just to let you know, somebody said that is such an incredible calling. Thank you for all that you're doing.
Oh, thank you so much.
Yeah, I mean, that it truly, truly is. It's such a pleasure to talk to you. Like I mentioned before, she is so warm and understanding and just has a wonderful
thank you
here. And I just thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate you talking to us today.
No, thank you. Thank you for allowing me and giving me the opportunity here. I appreciate you and everything that you do as well. You know that I'm a huge supporter and if you have not gone to massage from Nicole, you have to.
Good luck getting on that schedule. No, I'm kidding.
That's true.
All right, guys. Well, I hope you have a wonderful day, and we'll talk to you later. Bye.
Bye.